friends, what's up? It's Sean with a Tech Guides tutorial. This one's called Anatomy of an Angular App. So it's going to be a two-part lecture. Part one, I'm going to go over different features that could make up an Angular app. For example, like a dashboard of some sort with data analytics. And part two, I'm going to do more of a technical sort of deep dive. So the part one is going to be describing the various components on an architectural level, and part two would be talking about the code itself and how the app is built on a modular level with components and services and dependency injection and things like that. So let's get started. So I'm currently building a philanthropy platform. So the web app, it's not just a website, it's a web app. What's the difference between a website and a web app? Usually we talk about static pages versus single page applications versus, full-fledged software that you use on a web browser. For example, like Facebook.com. It's pretty complex. Any of the Google softwares, like you can use them on a browser, but it's not a simple website. It's a single page application. Sometimes it's very complex software where you don't need a refresh every time you go to a new page. It's more of like it's an application. It's not a website. So Angular is great for that, for building things like that. I'm building a philanthropy platform, as I mentioned. So what could be some of the features that go into, let's just take a step back and think about what kind of features, what's possible with a web app. There are only so many things you can put in an app, right? You can't have a VR experience on a 2D screen, right? You can't have smells coming out of your computer. You can't have, I don't know, like it's visual, right? There are visual elements, the UI elements that are used and reused. They're the basic building blocks of web applications, any kind of software. And there's overlap between mobile applications, desktop, web apps. So, yeah, I think the most common UI component that we're used to, if we had to break down the anatomy of an Angular app, would be the nav bar, right? So whether it's off to the left-hand side, the right-hand side, usually it's on the top. For the current app I'm working on, it's on the left-hand side, so it's a bit different. So, and there's a nested nav within the nav. So the first thing I'm looking at here is a nav bar with 4 icon buttons, essentially. One is a search feature, one's a notifications feature, one's a messages feature, and one's a sort of a drop-down menu to 4 other applications within the application. Further down, there is a sort of a settings type of pop-up, as well as an account pop-up with your user photo, username, a link to your profile, settings, logout functionality, and plans and upgrades. So the payment. Anything worth building, any high quality application that you build, you have to remember, is anyone in the whole world going to build a free house for you ever? No, they won't. So similarly, you're not ever going to build anyone a free, premium software online, because just like it takes tons of effort to build a home, and it's worth like $500,000. You have to think of the fact that you're a software architect who's been doing this for like 10 years, and you have such a rare skill that it's worth lots and lots and lots of money because it takes lots and lots and lots of hours of effort. So what's obvious to you, I was telling this to my little brother. He was explaining to me sort of 3D printing. He's a mechanical engineering grad student, so he was explaining to me sort of 3D modeling as if it's common sense. And I told him, hey, it's not common sense. It's common sense to you because you're an expert, right? So you have to remember there's nothing trivial about building an Angular application. It's very nuanced. However, you can make it simple in your mind if you break it down into views. Sort of, you have the nav bar off to the side, and then the rest is the screen. So depending on what you click on the nav bar, you're going to have a different thing pop up on the screen without a refresh, right? It's a single page. So for example, if you click on the messages icon from the nav bar, you get a list of messages that people sent you. So in terms of UI, it's pretty simple. It's like a list of messages. However, to implement that is complex because it's like a two-way thing. People are sending messages to your particular username, and you're sending messages to a bunch of people. So to implement something like that is very difficult. However, the UI element is pretty simple because you just have lists of chats, which is just text. It's like a list of text. There is like I mentioned earlier, a drop down with links to other functionalities within the app. For example, a to-do list within the app. A link to your inbox. So it's not Gmail, it's not Yahoo, it's not ProtonMail. There's actually, within the app, there's the functionality of sending and receiving messages. And that's really neat because now you can build apps that are like with chat functionality, with commenting, with sharing, all these sort of things. You have a link to your profile, messages, file manager, so you can upload files from your hard drive to the web app. There's a Scrum board even, so project management tools, everything that you may need. So I'm looking at a template with sort of every sort of feature, and then the process is just sort of picking and choosing what you need, right? So like I mentioned, a drop down like with 6 apps within the app. So there's that. You have the settings page, you have the account details, right? To implement a logout button is very different than to implement a profile page, right? It's totally different code, and is very different from implementing a settings page. If you think about it, settings, you update things from your settings page and it affects the entire app, right? Like if you go to your settings page, something common that we do is like change our profile picture or a name or contact information. That permeates through to the entire app, right? So you have to account for that. You change it in one place, right, like your profile picture, and it updates everywhere. So there's so much to account for in terms of a complex web app such as Angel Gift. That's the name of the philanthropy platform I'm starting. So I already have the branding, the name, the website, the logo, all that is good to go. I'm currently building the platform itself with Angular version 14. So, and not to mention, like a global search feature, also very extremely complex to build. But once you get those things taken care of, the rest is sort of simple, right? You have your application drop down with more applications, right? So the pattern there is a big application. The lesson there is a complex dashboard such as this is made up of smaller pieces. So it's very modular, right? These smaller applications are useful within a bigger application, right? An account page, a settings page, these are going to be the same for every website or app that you ever build or you ever use. UI elements are going to be the same across every app. You're going to have a nav bar pretty much in every app. You're going to have icons in every app you ever use. You may or may not have data analytics, so charts, graphs, bar graphs, histograms, plotted graphs, everything. That is a common feature of a lot of data-driven applications. And then, of course, just headers and footers, different size of text, different headings, H1 to H6, and lots of illustrations and icons and design throughout. Lots of color theory and different color palettes throughout. A lot of variables with changing numbers, right? So I'm looking at platform analytics. This is just sort of dummy content so far, but platform analytics shows you the number of new users, number of churn users, conversions, page CRT. I don't know what half that means, but these are analytics. So a useful Angular app is going to have some sort of analytics, data collection. It's going to present that data beautifully with charts. Last week I launched sort of a very micro SaaS called Ephemetrics. It's just basically a mood tracker to make sure you're not sad, you're happy. And the magic there is if you keep using something like that every single day, you're going to feel better eventually. It's just guaranteed. So the philosophy behind it is fewer bad traits, more good traits, fewer moods, more happiness, more joy. So that's the entire premise of that product, which I launched earlier this week. Why am I mentioning that? Well, so that's a very simple UI, right? There's no data collection, data analytics. However, for the app I'm currently building, there's going to be a ton of data collection and a ton of variables that change, and then that's going to update your UI based on the data. So it's getting a lot more complex with this app, but something that's important to me. So I'm gonna build it. So there are buttons that can be sort of toggle switches, radio buttons. I'm looking at a radio button. You click it or unclick it, and it essentially hides the submenu. So that's neat because now with a click you can minimize, right? If you think of Google Chrome or any sort of operating system, you're always going to have a minimize button on the top left. You click it and the window shrinks. That's like if you think of your entire operating system as a software, as one dashboard, and you have different applications within your computer. You can think of sort of Google as in the same way, like it's a big company with small products and that work together, right? Microsoft, same way. It's a tech giant, but a lot of different small projects like Bing and Windows operating system and all these things. So every tech company is going to have different things they work on. But UI, as far as UI elements, because I'm a front end focused developer, there are only so many possibilities. So we're reaching near the 15-minute mark. So this is going to be part 1, where I walk through the anatomy of an Angular app. So stay tuned for the next episode.